Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for showing up tonight. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road2College and the Paying for College 101 group. Let me just do a tiny bit of housekeeping to make sure that people can continue to join from the waiting room. Great. And just to tell you that tonight is recorded. We will send the link tomorrow if you want to watch it again or watch it with somebody else in your family. These meetings are technically Zoom meetings, they're not webinars, and I only say that because if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it's easier to just ask your question than to type it out, but feel free to type questions in the chat. I'm going to be checking the chat and, we will try and answer as many questions as we can without staying on too late. So before we really get started, I'd love to know who is here tonight. In terms of, I assume most people have a rising senior. And has anybody started writing their essays? Have you figured out and narrowed down the colleges that you are going to apply to? This is all kind of a time of flux, which is perfectly fine for families and students to figure out exactly where they're going to apply. And obviously where you apply is going to determine all the essays you need to write. So we'd love to know a little bit about everybody who's here tonight. And I guess also any worries, concerns about the essay. This is, again, the time of year. Maybe some of you your school has finished and you're kind of realizing, oh gosh, like summer, I maybe should get started on essays, because as we'll explain to you too, the more you can get done this summer, the easier the fall will be, and it'll be a little less stress for the student and a little less stress for the family as well. Okay, so we have a high school English teacher and a parent of a rising junior. So you know this from all angles.
I see.
Oh, good. Somebody has started their draft of the personal statement. They visited colleges, list of college almost completed. That's good. Great. List of colleges done. I'm glad to see that. Again, it kind of like is one thing kind of checked off the list that needs to get done. Great. Okay. So let me just spotlight ourselves, and I'm going to spotlight John, and we're going to get going. Okay, so please continue sharing. I love reading about where people are from and what your concerns, and I'll continue to look at that throughout the evening. Let me just introduce John Schlander. John is the managing editor of Road2College, and he's also in charge of the essay coaching program that we run. And John, if you could give a little background on your other experiences, which are also very impressive.
Sure. So I am a longtime newspaper editor who then went into the digital side of things when that was really starting to take hold 20 or so years ago. And nowadays I spend my time working with Road2College and Debbie and a few other clients running my own business. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I love this piece of my work.
And one of the things we'll talk about a little later are the type of people who we have as coaches. But and as you can see from John's background and some of the people we'll share, we have a mix of people who are professional college counselors, but also people who were professional writers, because they very much know the process of writing and how to get the best story told, which is what we're all trying to do here, working with our students. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about how to write an effective essay. And maybe John, if you can skip to the next slide. I want to just not spend a lot of time, but talk a little bit about the role of essays in the whole admissions process, because I think it's important that you understand that, and also relative to the college list. So that's why I was asking where people are in developing their college lists. We're going to go into more detail about what makes a winning essay. What are some good steps that your student can take to go from, how do I come up with my idea, to how do we actually put that into an outline and create an essay out of it? And then we're going to go through, John has an example of a student from last year that he worked with. And then I know that people have sent in a few sample essays, so thank you for that. And we picked one of those essays that we're going to read live and talk about what everybody thinks of that essay. It's anonymous, and share what improvements that we think that student can make. And we're going to base it off of the things that we've talked about what makes a good essay. And then we'll talk about a timeline, and if you need help, how we can help you. Okay, let's get started. So the reason why I talk and we start off with the how does the whole admissions process work and where do essays fit into it, is because I think it's really important. There's a lot of angst and anxiety about writing the essay, but I want people to recognize that what's really even more important than the essay is making sure you're applying to the right schools, because if your list isn't commensurate to the type of student you are, then worrying about the essay is not going to make as much of a difference, because as I explained the process, a lot of times the admissions office and the officers won't even get to read your essay. So we want to make sure that you have a college list where the admissions process actually moves your application to the point where they're reading the essay, and then your essay becomes very important and it can make a difference. So hopefully a lot of you know by this point of dealing in the admissions process, there's lots of different factors. So admissions officers look at that. There's what factors that we call are an academic review, and then there are factors that would be considered personal review. And to be quite honest, and we had done this presentation a few months ago with a former admissions officer, and I kind of loved what she pointed out. One of the things she said was, you have to remember that colleges are in the business of academics. And so academics are their first and foremost that they want to make sure that students can accomplish. And so they are taking a strong look at your students' profile and their application from an academic standpoint first, and seeing how that matches to the school. And then if that application passes the academic review, it moves on to the personal review. So if your student is applying to schools where they don't even pass what we would call the academic bar, then again, their essays may not barely be read, and they're not going to make much of a difference at all. So as you can imagine, the things that go into the academic review are grades. That's first and foremost the most important thing. Grades along with the class rigor that your student has been taking. Are they taking APs, honors classes? Are they in the IB program? Are they taking, college prep level classes? That's all. And then also, how do your students' grades, their class rigor, and their test scores, how does it compare to their high school profile? And I always like to ask this question, and it's not a quiz, but how many people know what the high school profile is? That's my first question. And the second question is, how many people have actually pulled up and looked at their particular high school's profile? Let me just give a few minutes to see what people's response is. And then the third piece is, have you ever kind of compared your student to where they fall relative to what you see in the profile? So, okay, first three answers we got a range. One person says yes, one person says they've looked at it, another person says, I don't know anything about it. So, and that's okay. But now is the time to find your school's high school profile. It may not be public. When I say public, it may not be on the website, but it sure should be public, in meaning that you can ask and get a copy of it. So at a minimum tonight, even now, if you want to Google your high school name, and whatever it is, my kid's high school name was Lower Merion High School. You could Google Lower Merion High School profile, and hopefully it is on your high school's website. And if not, it's a very valid request to, and your student can ask, or you can ask as a parent, ask the guidance counselor or guidance department for a copy of your school's profile. They most likely absolutely have it, because this is the information that gets sent to colleges. So this is how colleges, know about your high school, and this is how they can look at your student's transcript and compare it to the profile to kind of gauge, if your school doesn't give APs, and there are schools that do that, then the high school profile is going to tell that counselor that, and so then they'll be able to better evaluate your student's transcript relative to the way your high school operates. So that is kind of what goes into the, academic review. And quite honestly, schools have, a calculation usually that they weight these things, and they come up with a number, and your students, test grades, test scores, grades, class rigor, how difficult their high school is, all kind of fits into this academic number. And then if your student passes whatever the minimum bar is that college is looking for, they will go on to the next stage of the process. And at that stage, admissions counselors are looking at things like, letters of recommendations, which start to fill out even more who your student is, because they're, reading about a third party writing about your students' strengths and weaknesses, or or particular experiences that they have had with your student in the classrooms. The counselors, the admissions counselors, are looking in more detail at the extracurriculars, which are listed on the Common App. And then in particular, as part of this personal review, they are definitely looking at the essay to kind of see what more does the essay tell the admissions officer about the student. And the last part, I just want to note, it's kind of just a sentence at the bottom, but it's actually pretty strong. And we wrote institutional priorities and culture. So every school has priorities, the priority, and they change from year to year. It could be, based on what that school wants to grow, or it could be a donation that they've gotten. It could be, quite honestly, past few years, a lot of schools have been focusing on growing their data science program. And so whatever that priority might be also factors into what the admissions office is looking at when they're looking at applications. And these are things we can't control. I wish that they were more transparent, that the colleges were more transparent about their priorities. Sometimes you can get hints about what the priorities are. You can be reading press releases from the colleges. If there's any recent like major donations, they could be talking about their year-long goals and missions, and you might kind of see hints of what they're focusing on. And another piece is just culture. Different colleges place different emphasis on different types of culture. Some are much more collaborative. Others are placing a really strong emphasis on hands-on learning experiences, on co-ops. And so again, if you can get a hint of what the important is in the culture, these are things that you might want to weave into the essay to show that you're that type of student that fits into the culture. So this is, all the pieces that go into the review. So the last thing before we go on to the next page is I just want to show you just visually, we purposely made this picture on the right where the academic review is a much bigger piece, and then almost everybody goes through the academic review, but a much smaller percentage of the applicants go through the personal review. And the personal review is where the essay matters, and we want to make sure that your student is getting to the personal review stage of the process to make these essays matter. Okay, thanks, John. So how important are essays? I think we kind of just talked about that in terms of the process. Many colleges are just requiring one essay, and usually that essay is the Common App, or they call it the personal statement essay, and it's from the Common App. I've seen this question a few times, even though it's like one common essay, can you change it for different schools? Technically, you can change it. I would really recommend not, because you don't want to, and I have seen this where a student makes a mistake and sends like, an essay they kind of tailored for one school and they forget to make the changes. And then when they submit their Common App to another school, that wrong essay goes. So the essay prompts are meant to be, an essay that can go to all types of schools. So and it's really about you. And so I wouldn't go down the route of trying to make changes for different schools. Essays, do help admissions officers distinguish between students that are academically very similar. So that's kind of that picture that I just showed. They're going through an academic review. A lot of students pass that academic review, and now we have to find other ways to distinguish those students, because the pile that they're looking at from the personal review are students that the admissions office feels comfortable can academically succeed at the college, which is really their number one priority. So now they've got to find out what's going to be different among these students. And that's really when the essay starts to make a difference. And then the last piece is a lot of schools, and particularly in the pursuit of merit scholarships, have additional essay applications. Additional scholarship applications where there are more essays involved. So again, if your student is filling out a scholarship application, at that point, an essay is very important, because that's really going to help, provide the color of who that student is, and is going to probably make the difference about who gets the scholarship. It's going to be, how well written that essay is. Okay, so next. Who is reviewing the applications? In the past few years, from COVID on, and with the test optional phase that has happened, even though some schools are now going test required, there has been an increase in certain schools. I would say, probably like the top 30 or 40 schools have seen a very, very strong increase in application numbers, because it just, when colleges took away the need to provide a test score, a lot of students, in a good way, felt more freer to apply to a broader range of colleges that maybe they wouldn't have if they had to submit their tests. So that was good in some ways for students, because they felt, that they had more opportunities. But the flip side was it really opened the floodgates at certain schools. And because of that, the admissions office didn't get more staff. And they had to find other ways of going through these applications. One of the ways is that they used to always do this, but they increased the number of what we would call professional readers that they hired. And a professional reader is somebody who is usually in the higher education. They may have worked in admissions at some time in the past. They're familiar with reviewing applications, but they're not on a permanent member of the admissions staff. And a lot of the admissions offices would basically give, and they still do, they give applications to professional readers to do the first review. And they give them an algorithm of how to score that application. And again, this is where the academic bar comes in, and that professional reader will kind of follow the instructions of the college. They will, look at the transcript, compare it to the profile, look at the test scores, and probably do a very quick glance of the rest of the written part of the application, and then come up with a score for that application, which is then sent back to the college. But this is how the colleges are able to get through as many applications as they received, because they're really outsourcing that first review. So that's one person who reads the application. And then when it gets to the more serious personal review stage, it's the admissions officers. If there's been an admissions officer from your particular region that's been assigned to your region, that they are reading the application because they're familiar with the students, usually come from that locations, they're familiar with the high schools. And then sometimes in the faculty are asked to get involved, but that's really usually more in the case of reading essays for scholarships. If your student is applying to a school and they could be the scholarships might be on the school's website right now, so it might just be part of the overall admissions process. A lot of scholarships actually happen after the student submits their application, and then the college comes back, and to a certain subset of students, they say, we'd like to invite you to now apply to these scholarships. So some scholarships you may not know that your student needs to write essays to until after they've submitted their application. So again, a lot of those scholarships are read by admissions officers, but a lot of them are also, they include the faculty if there's a particular academic interest of the student or the purpose of the scholarship, then faculty will get involved in reading. Okay, what's next?
You ready for me here, Debbie?
Yep. Wait, so I'm sorry. So John, so so to sum up, sorry, what I just said, the reason why I asked about college lists, as you can see, the college list, and to me, is the pivotal point in the application process. Besides just essays, as we know, because we do a lot of presentations on this topic, the college list is going to determine your cost of college. Your student can only get into colleges that they apply to, right? Your student can only get money from colleges they apply to. So and the number of essays your student is going to have to write is determined by the college list. So the college list is so important. And as you can see, you want to make sure your student is applying to the right colleges. And I say that in quotes, meaning financially viable, but also that your student has a chance academically, because if they are so far away from the academic bar, then all of the work on the essay isn't going to make a difference, because the admissions officers aren't even going to get to that stage of writing an essay. But let's hope that they do. And so now we need to know why, what the qualities of a winning essay are really like. Okay, sorry, John, go ahead.
Very good. Hello again, everyone. So I hope in these next slides to give you a framework to either help coach your own students or otherwise support them as they're going about their essays. So we refer to 3 qualities of a winning essay. And if they don't do all 3 of these things, it's probably not an effective essay. So you have to hit all 3 of these. First one we refer to is it shows who you are. So if your student has an essay, you've read through it, and it's telling something, but you don't really think it's capturing who they are, especially if we're talking about the personal statement, then it's probably not the right idea or the right execution. And typically it's showing potential. That's what colleges are looking for. Second, it answers the prompt memorably with memorable examples. We get some essays, I've run the coaching program at Road2College, and we'll get some essays that are just a little too general. There's nothing specific enough, great details that you really get a sense of who is the writer here? Who is this student? So you want to be memorable and have these examples. And then, of course, the overarching quality of the essay is why you? Why should the college want you, your student, as a member of their college? So if you can accomplish all 3 of these, this is the framework. This is the test, as it were, that an essay is trying to pass. The second framework here is, what is it that you are trying to say in an essay. So you're saying superficial things often in an essay, maybe not superficial, surface things, what happened, but really what you're trying to accomplish here is to demonstrate, to show that you have particular traits that colleges may value. And in fact, future employers may value, friends may value. So these are what we might think of as the gold that you're going for here. You don't have to show all these in every essay, but we refer to drive, curiosity, resourcefulness, also thought of as resilience, overcoming challenges, contribution. That's in the sense of service, giving back, something you may accomplish. A lot of colleges really focus on this. And in fact, in supplemental essays, we'll often ask a question, especially about that. And they want you to have contributed in high school and contributing on their campus, and indeed, throughout your life. Empathy, leadership. It doesn't have to be like you were president of a club, but that you had the ability to lead people. And finally, expression. And by expression, we're referring to the essay itself, how you put yourself out there, how you express yourself. So if we're starting an essay from scratch, or if your student is starting an essay from scratch, this shows 10 steps to get there. I'm going to go through each of these, but I wanted to put these up all at once so you sort of get the lay of the land here. Anybody can follow this. This is a process that we follow with our coaching team at Road2College. We take everybody through this. Some people will come to us with a completed essay. So they're sort of skipping down the list here, and we will take a look at the essay. But even then, we may take them back to the beginning. The essay may not be quite there, maybe something in the execution. They may not really be demonstrating these traits. It may not be accomplishing the 3 qualities of an essay. So sometimes we'll take people back. But this is the basic process for a good college essay. And this may look familiar to many of you as just being a good essay or a good piece of writing. It takes some thinking and planning before you just sit down and start writing. And then it takes some reflection and editing at the end. So let's tie it together in the first step here. As you are thinking about how you are going to approach all this, you're reflecting on your traits and things you've done. So you're thinking, here I am, I'm a high school student. I'm thinking about what are my best qualities? What other people think are my best qualities? Are people constantly talking about how curious I am, or how I seem to do 5 things at once? I have a lot of drive. What is it about you that are your best qualities that you might demonstrate in an essay? You're probably going to want to focus on a couple of those for the essay. Second, how have you exhibited them? In other words, what's the material you're going to write about? But at this phase, we're just asking the question because some people may think they have a trait, but when they think more about it, they can't think of any good examples of it. So maybe they haven't thought this through enough, and they have to go back to the drawing board and think, well, maybe there's another trait. Recently is also an important thing because the college wants to see a seriousness of purpose. So you can't really write based on an experience if you're 18 years old writing about when you were 13 years old. You may write about a formative experience then, but if you're talking about a trait that you have, you may mention that, but you're going to want to show a progression, a growth. And then how can you use these examples in a truthful, authentic way? If you're too general, if you're not offering examples, then it's going to start sounding false. It's not going to have that ring of truth to it, the believability. It takes those specifics to really get there. A brief aside about AI, I get asked a lot of questions about ChatGPT, how students are using it or not using it, cheating involving it. So I'll say one of the fascinating things for all the power of AI, it's not good at knowing who you are and writing about you. In fact, if you try to get it to write an essay, the essay will just be curiously vague. As it tries to put in specifics, it just won't know. So it's useless for writing an essay. It has tons of other uses out there in the world today. It can even help you evaluate an essay, maybe find the right word that you're looking for, the same way you might just Google something. So yes, it can be helpful in other ways, but it cannot do this. The person is the expert in themselves. Then you want to match those traits you're talking about with one of the common app prompts. The 7 for this year, which are the same as they were last year, I've put on the screen here. So some will pick different ones here. A lot of people will ask me, what are the most popular ones? And I would say it's really across the board. Surprisingly, hardly anybody picks number 7, at least the students I've gotten. That's the wide open one. Do anything on your choice. It's like people want a little more direction. It's like asking somebody to sit down and write a story and they don't know where to start. But if you say, sit down and write me a story about something that particularly interesting that happened to you with your best friend in the past year, then they're going to start writing. So it's like the more specific, the more it prompts. So these are the Common App prompts that are coming up here that you can base the essay on. So the idea is think of the traits and then match them up with one of these. In step 3, we outline. Nobody likes to outline, right? So I'm a lifelong writer and editor, and I've talked with so many people over the years. I've worked with hundreds of writers. I've tried to pick their brains about what the resistance is to outlining. And what I've discovered is that some people are able to, especially the pros, after they're in it a little while, they're outlining in their head. Newspaper reporters are some of the fastest, and
They
some
may
of
not
it,
even realize it, right, John? Like, it's just, that's the way they think. They think of, like, the headline, the first
yes,
first paragraph, and the
yes.
conclusion, and that's just the way they're gathering the information.
And they're able to do that because they're very clear on their purpose. So you kind of know up front, if you're a newspaper reporter, what kind of story am I writing? Am I writing about an event? And I instantly know 5 W's, 1 H. In other words, the structure is very clear in my head, and I can start doing it based on that. So I would say that even might be true then of essay writers if they knew their purpose very clearly. If you really know, yes, I am trying to show these traits, and yes, I need to answer one of these prompts, and I need to do it memorably. If you really knew all that, yeah, you might be able to outline in your head. But the truth is, students only have one go around at this. Nobody becomes an expert in it, right? Unless you're like in our shoes. But as a student, you're going to do this one time. Maybe you'll do essays again for grad school, or you'll have an interim scholarship. So you're going to be writing other things, but not like a personal statement for the common application. So the idea here is write down your thoughts into an outline, force that discipline, even write a 1-sentence thesis. If you were to ask your student, what are you hoping to say in this essay? If they're very disjointed in their answer and they can't narrow it down, it's kind of like, give me a headline for this. So, Mom, I'm trying to show that I showed particular resilience this past year when uh, uh, physics got extremely difficult and the whole class was lost. And then I got that study group together and we overcame it. Okay, in a shorter way, I'm showing resourcefulness and leadership with the example of how I handled physics class. Okay, so I just did a little brainstorming there. That's all we're talking about. This is not like a formal thing here. This is getting your thoughts together. If you take it to that point, you are going to be set for a good essay. I had a good example with a student I just talked today, an extremely bright student, and she's doing her supplemental essays before she does her personal statement. And she had to write 7 or 8 essays between 400 words and 50 words. So there's these 8 essays. And she knew she needed to redo one of them. We were able to just talk about it. She got what I was saying, and I could tell she was already outlining in her head. And so we talked through. So instead of telling, show me this, show me a scene, oh, I see what you mean. Then you can bring in this stuff. This line here, that might be good in the end as a kicker, but we need more description and then show me more about how you showed the leadership there. You don't even have to use, and we just talked it through. That's just like outlining. If we had been working from scratch, she would have told me the idea, we would have walked it through, and we would have written down an outline like that. So that's what we're talking. We're really talking about organizing. If you don't do this, what happens? You sit down to write, you sit there for a little while. Maybe I'll skip the intro and you start writing a middle part or something. Or maybe then you go back to, but you're not sure where you're going. And it's just so much easier if you break this down into your purpose and what you're trying to show. So that's really what we're trying to get to. If people insist on writing first, it'll just take a little bit longer. And they may have to go back to the thinking phase again. Now we're actually writing. So we're in step 4 before we're actually writing the essay, right? So the value of planning, thinking and planning. You'll often hear people say that because of the number of essays readers may be reading, which can be hundreds and hundreds, and as hard as it may be to hear, many essays are given 30 seconds. So you really have to start with a bang. And you want to have a memorable opening. So I put an example on the right here. This was a student I worked with last year. We worked from the very beginning. We talked about a couple of ideas, and this is where we landed on an intro. It was interesting because we were Zooming and he was in his bedroom, and hanging on his bedroom wall are all these drones and engines, like model airplane engines and all these gizmos. And then behind him is a 3D printer. And so he just started talking to me about his interests because he really didn't know where to go. And I started asking him about the things on his wall. Anyhow, this is where we ended up. I just asked him to start telling me some stories. And he was so passionate and interested in all this, just by asking questions, that we were able to elicit this from him. So I don't know how well you can read on the screen here, but my pulse quickened as my drone malfunctioned. I had to land it or lose it, but the vibrating camera feed made me dizzy. As soon as I navigated my prized project over grass, I cut the throttle. Fortunately, unlike another plane I had built and crashed, this one fell safely to the ground. So as a former journalist, I especially love this because there's some good narrative writing. There is good use of verbs. It's very descriptive. You get a sense. He even tosses in like a little reference here. Unlike another plane I built and crashed, he's given you a little context here. It's like, it's a pretty nice piece of writing. And then he comes in with context here. All around me in my bedroom are these past and present projects, each with a unique story and place in my heart. Emotion. A lot of students, this was another thing I was working with a student this morning. She recognized that herself. She said, I feel like I'm telling a lot of stories, but I'm not getting in like any emotion in this. That was she was funny. She had a good sense of humor too. She was actually telling me about robotics as a passion of hers, and she said that her she was having her younger sibling read it, and they said that the essay felt robotic. So it's like everybody's trying to, fit something in like that and not to make it too complicated. So you just try to keep it simple, but like, yes, introducing some emotion, some heart into it. Sorry, everyone. 1 second. Sorry about that. I had a rambunctious little puppy there. So we were able to introduce in here this whole idea of him and his interests and where he was going with it. And then the concluding thought. So we're ignoring the body for now. The concluding thought on this same essay, where he was going with all this, is his interests in study are engineering and aviation. His father and grandfather were pilots. So he has the interest in aviation, but he feels that family pride, but he's carving out his niche in design. And he acknowledged he had difficulty in school during COVID because he's such a hands-on kind of person. Put him in a remote environment, that was hard on him. But there was a positive side to it in that he went crazy with all his projects here and he really learned that way. So then he sort of tied it all together here. His bedroom is his happy place. He said, as I prepare for college, I'm thinking a lot about design, building, improving, and chasing my love for aviation and engineering. So that's the idea of creating the memorable opening and the closing. We skipped a couple here, didn't we? Hang on 1 second. So then you need to stick with the point through the whole essay here. This is why I'm saying stick with your thesis. You want to use these examples, but I find some students want to stick in the kitchen sink and they think they need to put in all their accomplishments. And keep in mind, the Common App has places for that, listing out the accomplishments. So that's not the purpose of the essay. The essay has focus. You're really focusing on this thesis that you're trying to stick through and not get off track. Transitions for natural flow. Some people get stuck on the transitions, or they hit the conclusion and they say in conclusion, or a lot of them just feel forced or awkward. So I always ask people to think of the ideas. How are you going to tie together the ideas? And if they flow naturally, then it will flow naturally. And we'll have a couple of examples of that coming up. Then we get into the editing phase of it here. So you can edit yourself. This is hard to do, but it's more than proofreading. It's sort of stepping back at the end of all of it. You walk away, you have a drink of water, do a couple jumping jacks, and then you come back and you say to yourself, did I accomplish my purpose? Is this essay effective? Have I put my best foot forward and shown the best traits effectively that I want to? Have I shown why a college should want me as a student? And you really think about that on the big picture. That could cause you to make a couple more changes. Nothing wrong with that. You're just being very honest. And yes, it also means honing it for style, grammar. You certainly don't want any typos. You may need to trim it down. Some students uh, uh, will find that 650 words seems like a lot. Others will write 1,000 words and think they're at 650. So it's an art to like really editing yourself and getting feedback on your essay, whether that's often the parent, sometimes it's an older sibling, sometimes it's a friend. I've known some students that have had multiple people read back on their essays. Or you can turn to a professional like like my team that does this here. But we're hoping in the session here to give you the tools to at least know a structure for how you can go about it. I will pause for a second. Debbie, are there questions to bring up at this point?
Yeah, a lot of questions about, does the essay have to tie into the student's major?
So I will say no. Lots of students, in fact, this may be the concern of some of you in the room here, don't know their major. So in the example I gave, the student knew he was interested in design and engineering. He hadn't necessarily chosen a major. Some students have chosen a field, but even if you haven't chosen a field, all is not lost. You can still show that you have drive, you are resourceful, you are intellectually curious. Just say what it is you are interested in. What have been your experiences? What have you been doing? What did you do in the summers? What was your coursework like? It's like there's a lot of fodder here to write about. You don't have to have the world figured out by the time you are writing your personal statement, just to take that pressure off there. Some do, or some know what their interest is. I bet that many students who say they know what their major is at that point wind up changing. I knew a lot of people like that. So no, it's not necessary. Now I'll take it a step further there. It can be helpful sometimes because there are scholarships specific to certain fields. Colleges may be seeking people in a certain major. It may be harder to be admitted under more competitive majors. So major matters, field matters, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to write about.
Right. And so we're not saying, no, you shouldn't, include major, but you
Perfectly
feel
fine.
like you have to. I think it's more important that the essay reflects, some of these traits. And if by chance you then have, experiences or, events that incorporate, the student's interests and that relates to a major, great. But the more important thing would be, is the essay demonstrating some of these important traits.
And you,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll just add, I'm using the word field a little more generally. Like if you don't know chemistry, but you know science or tech, say that. Or if
there's
that's a particular interest, then that's what you're thinking. You're not committing in your, statement.
sure. Allison, go ahead. Somebody they wanted to ask the
Hi.
question live. Go ahead.
Hi. How are you? First of all, thank you both for hosting this. It's just fantastic. I had a quick question. It may answer some questions that other parents have um, with regard to the topics of the essay I noticed in the prompts. And I've been advised a couple of ways, and I don't know what to do. My daughter is a rising senior, had a phenomenal ninth grade. 10th grade had a very traumatic events happened. So what started out as a great grade wise did not end well. And she's just completed 11th grade honors in college classes, straight A's at the top of her game again. The problem is obviously that 1 year, when you roll it into a cumulative GPA, it changes the numbers. Had it been a regular year, we would be different in a different place GPA wise. And at one point, somebody had advised, don't write your personal essay about that there might be there's another place in the application why where you can explain. But I think personally, I think it may be that it's a good place because it shows how you faced a trauma and you were able to dust yourself off and put yourself back to where you needed to be, and work hard. And if I was reading something like that as person, I would say, here's a young person who dusted themselves off, righted their ship, and said, I'm not going to take this lying down. I'm going to keep going and keep climbing. Do you think that that's a bad place, or is there in fact another place on the application that you're supposed to write about that?
Good question. And actually somebody did already ask something similar in the chat. I think they actually might have directed it to me like individually. So maybe people didn't see the response. I'm a little torn in your, situation. I think we'd have to hear a little bit more detail and kind of like flesh out how the essay would really go. And, I'm not opposed to including in the essay. I'm not quite sure I would want to make it the complete focus of the essay. So you would have to know more.
Right. Right.
But
It's
there
just
is
that is there another place to explain that somewhere?
Yes, there is another section. That's what and it's actually
Okay.
additional information. And that is a perfect section to explain a little bit more, honestly, these academic hiccups, I'm going to call them.
Okay. Okay.
I guess honestly, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, I can't remember right now if there's actually a word limit to that section. But in some ways, it's like another mini essay area that you can use to,
Right.
so in that case, I think I would want to see this move to the additional information section. So so think about it, because now you can focus on something else, in the essay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just wasn't sure if because I'm brand new to this, is my oldest child, if there really is someplace else
There
that you're
really
supposed
is.
to.
It
Okay.
really is. Honestly, somebody else asked, and their child went to three different high schools, and they
Right.
want to explain why they went to three different high schools. That should not be in the essay. It's perfect for this other area called
Okay.
additional information.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
No problem. So John, there was also a few questions I think are worth addressing, kind of maybe a little bit about style, should people use quotes? Should they use proverbs? Should they use dialogue in the essay?
So some of this may be more in the realm of opinion. So I start this way. There are thousands and thousands of people evaluating essays. And while they work under certain criteria to score the essays, they all have their personal preferences of what might resonate with them too. To the point Debbie was just talking about there, I actually had a reader wish more students wrote real essays about actual problems and weren't just writing about happy, great things. So I'm just pointing out that there is a certain wild card factor here. What we're doing is placing our best foot forward here as effectively as we can. So the best way to answer it is probably just say that you always need to be yourself and be authentic as you do it. So if you think in terms of proverbs, I've had a couple students do that, and I actually had them end up rewriting it because it feels a little like they're leaning on somebody else. And is it really all about who they are? Now, if really the rest of the essay so fit in with whatever the proverb is that resonates with them, then good. I do see supplemental essays that may have you react to a quote or a quote from a famous alum, or they're trying to get you to, be able to relate to what the quote was all about. But in terms of your personal statement, I'm just mentioning my personal preference. I prefer the student write their own thoughts about themselves, if that's making sense. Authentically put forward their best traits. Why do I keep using the word authentically? Because a lot of essays come in where the student hasn't really presented enough of themselves. They're too stiff. They're maybe telling a story or there's a formality to it, and you don't get the sense that there is a young person behind there looking to go to college. So that's really what I'm trying to put across here when I use the word authentic. And you read certain things, right? When you read and somebody's giving you certain details or telling you a story, that's what's going to hit with a reader. So if I will now give a caveat, if somebody can do that with a quote from somebody else, great. If somebody can do that with a proverb from Confucius, that's great. But there's a risk on those, right? That it's pulling away from you and who you are to something else. And you don't want that. But nothing intrinsically is bad if you have the right approach to it. Dialogue could be fantastic. So if you are trying to portray a scene, or maybe even a coach like me is saying, well, you're telling me, kind of, sterilely what happened. Really take me inside the scene. What happened? Like you're telling me about this great, experience at this camp where you really had your head turned by something. Don't just tell me like a news account of it. Describe it to me. The feelings, what was going on. If there's dialogue in that scene, give me some dialogue. Now you have 650 words, so you're not writing a novel. You can't go on and on. But if you could do a highly descriptive piece like that, yeah, you're also showing some good expression there, that you have a command of, telling a story like that, bringing something to life. So that could be very valuable. I hope that answers the question. It's almost always in approach, not topic. And
Right.
yeah. Go ahead.
So somebody is asking, is it okay to write about something that's unrelated to school?
Of
Absolutely.
course.
You do not have to write to show your academic prowess. And in fact, I'm going to steal this example. It was again from the former admissions dean that we did a session with a while ago. She said one of the most memorable essays that she ever read, and she remembers it years later, was about a student writing how they hated cheese. And she's like, well, why would that stick out? Because it showed, he talked about, how cheese and pizza and all these foods that had cheese in it, were kind of how the way his friends bonded. And he was both willing to kind of admit that he did not like cheese. He did not like he was willing to kind of go against the grain of his friends. And for a 17, year old, that's a really interesting trait to show that you're so confident in yourself that you're willing to kind of stand up and show that you're different. And that's why that essay stood out to her. Nothing to do with his academics, but it showed an important trait that could then, if that kind of that type of trait also showed in their academics, now you're kind of marrying a story about that student's personality, and you can see also how they might have a strong academics, and then you can see how they might succeed in college with all of those characteristics. Okay, let me see any other questions.
We could demonstrate this in the example coming up too when we're ready.
Okay, yeah, let's go on to the example.
Okay, so I'll read this. You don't have to try to read it on the next screen, but the screen that's been up all this time, be thinking about this as I read it. You're the editor, you're the evaluator, and you're thinking what you think about this.
Actually, John, do you mind showing it too? It might be helpful.
Yes, I'm going to.
Oh, okay.
I'm just asking people to look at this.
Okay, so keep these traits in mind,
yes.
And as you reread this, and this is the sample that was sent in, right?
No.
Oh, not yet. Okay, sorry.
Not yet.
Mistake, soon.
Okay, so I will read this out loud and be thinking about those big picture things. You may hear, stylistic things that you would like to change or something that doesn't sound quite right. That's fine too, and we'll go over that in a second. But be thinking about the big picture things. Over the course of my life, I have spent days dedicated to mastering strategic games like Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader and Clue. When I was young, strategy and trivia games were my go-to pastime. Sure, the games themselves were cool, but I was more intrigued by the way playing them felt. Playing and succeeding in games that required as much mental input as those, especially when I was only an elementary schooler, left me with a sense of satisfaction that nothing else did. Instead of extrinsic rewards, like ring pops after a good grade, I was more concerned with the highest possible score and how I could obtain it. I first tasted this high at my mother's childhood home in downtown Baltimore when we were visiting my grandparents. Both of them were born and raised in a tiny village in the Mediterranean called Philippi, and neither of them made it past sixth grade. They moved to America after my mom and her brother were born, still not speaking English. By the time I was born, their English was still incomprehensible. So I grew up speaking both languages, living in two different worlds, my contemporary world and the mystical world of my grandparents, where society is stuck in 1968 and cigarettes are still good for you. My favorite thing to do with my grandparents, however, was word puzzles. In my 11 years of life, I hadn't found a challenge as hard as crosswords from an outdated Greek newspaper. I sat with my first one for hours, completely absorbed in the piece of paper I studied at the kitchen table while my cousins played tag in the basement. Once I solved it, I felt unstoppable. I began to crave this high, this rush of intrinsic satisfaction. Nothing satisfied my desire to do more, to learn more, to be better, not until I started seeking more intense mental stimulation. I learned to find it everywhere, not just in crossword puzzles, but in sports, in school, hiding in the nooks and crannies of my life. I noticed that I would find it most frequently in my high school science and math classes. My freshman year biology class was notorious for having the highest fail rate in the school, but I could see myself passing, earning my high, so I decided to take it. Despite the difficulty I faced in the beginning, by December, I found my groove and worked hard for the success I sought. I found myself in a similar situation during my sophomore and junior years. I maxed out my schedule with AP classes and went to Greek school on the weekends to earn my Greek language proficiency certification. Although I had never experienced so much stress, I had also never felt so intrinsically validated, knowing that I gave my absolute best to everything I did and that it paid off. I live my life every day craving that high, chasing it with every action I take. My biology class showed me how much I love not only hard work, but the sciences, biology and chemistry being my favorites, both because of the subject matter and also because they demonstrated that if I work hard enough towards something, I will not let myself fail. In my biology class, I became good friends with a girl who had battled cancer growing up. As we worked together, our lives became more intimately connected. She introduced me to Hope Faster, thinking it would suit me perfectly. It is a nonprofit organization dedicated to pediatric cancer research. This combined my top interests, service and science. Being part of something bigger than myself is one of the few things that fulfills me, leaving me with a sense of purpose and belonging. That summer, I discovered that participating in service and helping others fills me with the same sense of satisfaction as succeeding. Both left me with an insatiable desire to do more, to help more people, and to be better. So this essay came to me like this. This was an example of a student that we did not work with from the beginning. And I'll just say that she has a lot of good material here. So I didn't have to change the idea, but we did do some things on this. which I'll show in a minute. But right now, it's your turn. What do you think she was demonstrating in this essay? Did she manage to show some traits? Did she manage to write an effective essay? Did it demonstrate her as a student that colleges might want? You're the college reader here. What do you think of her? Do you have a sense of her?
Oh, somebody's writing it. If you have a sense also what you think, which trait it was, it best demonstrated. Again, not the essays are never going to demonstrate, all 70 of these traits. If it demonstrates 2 or 3, that's great. Oh, somebody didn't know if there was a common theme. Someone felt it showed drive, intellectual curiosity, absolutely intellectual curiosity, and service. Very true. Lots of drive. Is it a bit cliche to talk wanting to do something for a bigger purpose? Too generic. Showed determination and drive. One negative is it kind of sounds like she's just saying what she thinks the reader wants to hear. Maybe the ending was a little weak. I thought it was a bit all over the place, not cohesive enough, and maybe a little cliche. So lots of good critiquers out there. I think that these are all fair.
So here was my take on it, saying a lot of the same things you all said. So I think the main things she was showing here in terms of the traits were these 4. And she gave examples of all of them, so points for all of that. She had a few nice phrases in it. Her grandparents' mystical world versus her contemporary world, finding her place with science and service. What did we do to it? So it's a little hard to see all this here, but we looked through it for all these various points, including authenticity. Some of you are bringing up authenticity there. And I know this is impossible to read, but yes, we did quite a lot with it. I was maybe a little higher on this essay than some of you may have been. I found that she had a lot of good detail in it, and she was demonstrating multiple traits here, but she had some issues with expression, I think, in a few parts here where she was getting a little wordy. Maybe it was getting a little too, I don't know, a little too broad or sweeping instead of just keeping it to what it was. So yes, we trimmed down quite a bit. The ending, yes, we decided against that ending and came up with a different one here. So yeah, everybody is coaching well here. Did you want to go through another one, Debbie, or you want to do this first? I know we're at time
we'll
here.
talk a little bit about timeline, and then and whoever wants to stay, we'll go through the sample essay that was sent in. But just to give you an idea, and this is not to make anybody feel badly whether they haven't started yet or not. I mean, as you can see, we are in that second little bubble that says May to July, sorry. This is a good time to be writing those drafts of the Common App essay. I mean, as I mentioned, John's a professional writer, but I'm not a professional writer. But even when I write things, I feel like you need to let things sit and then come back to it. You can't pump out a great piece of writing, in a condensed period of time and under pressure. So with the summer, as much as we can encourage, this is really the ideal time to be writing the personal statement, which for the Common App, and to be then moving on to supplemental essays. because as we all know, as parents, come the fall, it's their senior year, you know, things are gonna start at school and they want to do well academically, in that first, semester of high school, depending on what, deadline they're going to be applying to. The first semester grades are going to be sent to colleges. So there's just a lot for, a student to focus on, and as much as you can get done over the summer, so much, for the better for their mental health and your mental health. So, so now is the ideal time to get started. And then, you know, as we mentioned, you know, July and August, you can work on supplemental essays. You know, September maybe is really refining essays if your student is, you know, applying early, which a lot of those early dates are, some start October 15th, the bulk is November 1st, there's some November 15th, December 1st, but again, as much as could be completely done, you know, by the beginning of the September, they may even want to, and they encourage them to apply to 1 or 2 rolling admission colleges so that they can get a response as quickly as possible, know that they've been admitted someplace. Tonight, you'll be getting an email about it for people who registered for this event. We do have a special deal of $100 off any coaching services that we offer. You know, I hope that our goal, and whenever we provide these sessions, is that you walk away with enough information. If you want to do it on your own, you can. Hopefully, you know, what John shared about how to work with your student, or, you know, hopefully maybe your student can do this on their own and maybe show it to somebody else, that's fine, you know. But if you feel like you want a little extra support, we're always here, and that's kind of the way we work with everything. We actually encourage families to try and do as much as they can on their own, and then come to us when they need the help. So you can get just an essay package where we focus on the personal statement, and these are time-based. So if we can get through working on the student's personal statement and there's some time to work on supplemental essays, that's fine. Or you can decide to add more time for that. Or we also have a bundle, which is the combination of working on the essay, and then once the essay is done, we move on and work on the Common App. So that would include any of these sections that we're talking about. So if there's information that you want to write about for additional information section, and the most important piece of the Common App is the activities list. And then, of course, filling out all the questions. And a lot of times there are questions about how to fill out the questions. So, you know, we also walk through that. So those are the different ways that we can help. And let's bring up, because we offered that somebody sent in a sample essay. So let's share the sample essay, and we'll go through kind of a critique like we just did with the essay that of the student that you worked with last year, John.
So we got this essay. Let me put it up on the screen here. So this won't take as long to read. It's a shorter essay. And once again, you can weigh in with your thoughts, and Debbie and I will weigh in with our thoughts. It's always interesting to hear, you know, the different opinions on things here. But it's interesting that we all have a common framework that we're working from here. Diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension, PAH, at age 5, my sister has been in and out of the hospital her entire life. Her battle with PAH means she often struggles with symptoms like breathlessness and fatigue. Consequently, I spend much time in hospitals trying to bring joy to her challenging days. Her ongoing health issues sparked my interest in the medical field. Motivated by the desire to help medically fragile patients like her, I went from playing doctor to wanting to become a nurse. I diligently monitor my sister, ensuring she rests when she is tired or unwell. My responsibilities include observing her for any issues, notifying my mom if there's a concern, and obtaining medical supplies when necessary. The next steps involve acquiring skills in symptom charting and medication management. To learn more about how I can help my sister, I participate in support meetings for PAH and congenital heart problems. I also accompany her to doctor appointments to gain insights into new medicines, healthy habits, and improved care. During a recent visit, they discussed the importance of diet and food timing. I've committed myself to remind her when and what she needs to eat. Interacting with my sister's nurse practitioners exposed me to the specialized roles nurses play in patient care. All of her nurse practitioners are enthusiastic about nursing as a career. They particularly enjoy the freedom to learn new skills and switch to new specialties. I am motivated by their relationships with patients and families, and it's clear to me that I want to pursue a career in nursing to provide this level of support. I have a deep appreciation for the critical role nursing plays in supporting and caring for patients and their families. As a relative of a medically fragile child, I have come to understand the significance of compassionate care, which enhances the healthcare experience for patients. I am eager to provide this kind of nurturing and aid as a pediatric intensive care nurse. What do you all think? Now, I'm actually not sure if this is meant as a supplemental essay or if it's meant as the Common App essay. Let's assume it's a Common App essay. What do you think she is demonstrating here? What do you think of her approach? Is it a persuasive essay? Or what else would you do with it or ask the student to do?
Any thoughts of anybody? I mean, we actually have over 100 people who are still with us. I'll just put the traits in the chat again, but feel free to comment on anything, you know, that you thought about the essay. No hook. Admissions officers have 5 minutes need to be drawn in early. Very good point. Is like, you know, what it is you want to demonstrate needs to come out quickly. The entire story is given away in the intro rather than leaving the reader curious as to what's next. Very good observation. Resourcefulness and service are strong. Oh, very good point. I feel I know her skills, but I don't know her character. Reads
That's a super, that's just
a
a
good
pause
one.
on that, super comment.
Yeah. Reads flat to me. It's very specific as to what she wants to major in and why, but I still don't know who the student really is. Completely agree. And I think that goes along with the comment before that. I feel like this is more about her sister than it is about herself. I think that there is a little too much about her sister as well in here. And that's actually, sometimes we see that, particularly stories about grandparents, you know, love grandparents, but the essay shouldn't be all about the grandparent. Okay, so somebody said, I know that the student wants to be a nurse, but that's all I really know. You guys are good.
Yeah, this is very good. So another way to look at this is how I find my way. What if your child had just assume, or you're a friend and they're coming to you. How would you approach them? So the way I would approach this one is I would compliment the student on a clarity of vision and their interest and clear passion for this. I would ask them a little bit about this experience they've gone through, because this has to really be something, right? Or even as an essay reader, if I can sort of take off my gotta have a memorable opening one, I might remember this as the young woman who's taking care of her younger sister who's been in and out of hospitals. So maybe there's some good material here, and how I would then I would talk with her about, tell me about like particular moment in the hospital, or tell me about some particular scene where you really had a realization, or like a really tough moment, or a really um, a time when something seemed out of control and suddenly you were able to figure it out. Or so I would try to elicit scenes out of her, because like we were saying, she tells a lot about what she wants to do, but she hasn't really described a whole lot of experience other than in these surface kind of ways. And I'm not sure how she's grown other than knowledge that she's gathered.
Mm.
But I bet she's grown in other ways. I bet she has, you know, you would just need to ask her how do you remain calm under pressure? What's the worst, you've ever had to go through with her? Have there been any moments where you thought, I just can't do this, or tell me more about it? How do you, and then you can get a better and better essay, as you can get more into the resourcefulness of it, more of who she is, more of, it has a lot of focus, but I don't have a sense of really anything else about her life other than in and out of hospitals here. So maybe there's something about how'd she balance this with classwork? Is she in extracurriculars? You see what I'm saying? Bring us more into the fabric of her life and how this is, and it'll seem more and more real. So I think, like, if I had this student, I could definitely have this conversation with her. She can write, she can describe things. She just needs to write more about who she is. I think this could turn into, and it's only half the length. This is half the length of 650 words. So there's a lot of room to do more with this. Some of it might be able to come out then because we would be showing more than we were telling. And it just needs like another layer of depth to it, another layer of who she is. But this has the makings, so I would be encouraging. I think you have the basis here of something very good.
And just on that point of 650 words, sometimes we get a question about, do I have to use all 650 words? I would encourage you to use them all, because this is a great opportunity to, highlight yourself. So, why sell yourself short by not using, all the space that you have? So in most cases, it's the opposite. We're helping students cut down. But once in a while we get the, one student that says, do I have to use all 650? And you don't have to, but it's a very good idea.
Yeah, my first thought would be they're not going deep enough or nuanced enough. Like if they're struggling to get 650 words, they probably don't have the right topic or the right attitude toward the topic, because 650 words goes fast.
Okay, well, tonight went fast because we're already like a half hour past when we were supposed to finish.
Thanks for sticking around, everyone.
Yep, thanks everybody. And hopefully this was helpful. Oh, I do want to talk about one last quick thing. If you want to hang on, there's somebody asked about who would students work with? Like, who are the coaches? So, I mean, we can flip back to a slide we have about that, but just so to let you know, I think we mentioned earlier, we have a range of different people, but I think they fall into two categories. One are people who are truly, they do for a full-time living. They are college counselors, but everybody, and then the others are professional writers, but everybody who, even if you're a private college counselor, that you work for us and with your students, they have strong writing skills. That's just kind of like the base of the people that we include, who are going to be coaches. As John came into this space, you don't have to have worked in college admissions to be a writing coach. In fact, a lot of the good coaches that we have are just strong professional writers who have been writing their whole life and know a good story and know how to help somebody tell a good story. So those are the two types of coaches we have. And, hopefully what happens is after you purchase, you get a form to fill out that tells us more about your student, the types of colleges that they're interested in applying to, kind of where you are in the process. I know that John has focused, and we've mentioned this. We will meet your student wherever they are. If they haven't come up with a topic, then we will help brainstorm their topic. If they have a topic but don't know how to fit it in to actually start writing, then we will help them, outline and write. If they've written a first draft and they then we'll take that and kind of, see if it's the right topic that continue on and do edits. So, so filling out this profile gives us a better idea of your student, their strengths, what they're interested in writing in, how far they are in the process, and then we will assign a coach, and that coach will reach out. And you know, a lot of the times we will start with Zoom sessions so that you get to know the coach a little better. The coach gets to know the student a little better. They talk through where, you know, what the help is they need. And then further along in the process, it might just be back and forth editing the essays themselves, and not necessarily, you know, one-on-one Zoom sessions. So you know, we are trying to tailor it to whatever your student needs. So I hope that this was helpful tonight. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us at support@road2college.com. You can respond back to any of the emails we send you, and that's the email address it goes to. Good luck. Good luck with college lists. Good luck with college visits, and good luck. Please, again, you don't have to work with us, but please start those essays and get as much as you can done over the summer. Thank you, John. Thanks for all of your expertise, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.